guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. I wanted to actually just say a few quick words about the different mathematics and who you have to either thank or shake your fist at, depending on how you feel about some of these subjects, whether they're past or present. Starting with Algebra 1, maybe Algebra 1, Algebra 2, kind of, get blended a little bit, but Algebra 1 or maybe more fundamental algebra goes way back to like 7th, 8th century AD, and I don't know exactly how to say his name. I looked it up on Google Translate, and it said roughly Al-Khwarizmi. I could be saying that wrong. If you are familiar with that person already, then you can let me know how to properly say the name. I tried to look it up and I tried to say it right, but who was Persian, but maybe they were from a region that's basically modern day Iran, I think. Anyways, they are responsible for Algebra 1 essentially. And moving on to geometry, we have Euclid. Shocker. Euclidean geometry is often what high school geometry is more properly called, or even Archimedes, which Euclid, Archimedes, um, Euclid being a Greek, but actually both of them kind of being Greek slash Egyptian, since they studied at the School of Alexandria. Um, Archimedes was actually after Euclid from my research, but both of them are basically the main people considered responsible for geometry. So you have them to either thank or hate, I guess, for geometry. Algebra 2, this one actually was another one like Algebra 1 that I wasn't familiar with this person, Gauss. Actually, I take that back. I'm a little bit familiar with Gauss because I believe he's him and another person whose last name is Jordan are responsible for something called Gauss-Jordan elimination, which is a way to simplify a matrix, basically. But other than that, I've never heard of this guy before either. And he's a German guy, basically responsible for what we now study as Algebra 2, more or less. And I put him in charge of Algebra 2 kind of actually because he did a lot with complex numbers, which is something you don't really touch on as much in Algebra 1. You would kind of wait till Algebra 2 to touch on complex numbers. But Al-Khwarizmi could also be responsible for Algebra 2 as well, since they're kind of one subject. Speaking of things that are basically one subject, you have precalc slash trig, which is actually a fairly recently developed class. Trigonometry is sort of standing on its own a little bit, but precalculus is sort of an insert to help bridge the gap between when students take algebra 2 and when they next go on to try to take calculus. So with the precalc trig, which is normally what the college class is called, and then when you take precalculus in high school, it typically has a lot of trigonometry in it already, or if you take trigonometry itself. This person that's responsible for that class mainly is going to be Euler, is how you're supposed to say his name, but it looks like Euler, Euler, who was Swiss, actually. I didn't know he was Swiss until I looked up some of this here. But Euler, or it looks like Euler, but it's pronounced Euler, is responsible for a lot of mainly trigonometry, not so much pre-calc, since pre-calc hasn't really existed for any more than maybe 50 or so years. And that brings us to the final class. Of course, not the final math class, because if you're going to major in mathematics, you take much more than just these classes. But these classes are the ones that I typically cover. I cover Algebra 1 to Calculus 3. So all of the calculuses, 1, 2, and 3, you can't really separate them out so much. All of the calculuses are normally attributed to Newton and Leibniz. Newton was an English guy. Oh, most of you are probably familiar with Newton. He's probably one of the most common names in that list that I've quoted here, and Euclid as well, or at least that's been my understanding. Newton and Euclid are probably one of the best known mathematicians out of the list. But Leibniz, another guy I did not know, I don't think I've ever heard of that name really. Another German guy. Him and Newton are both they contributed a lot to what we now study as calculus 1, 2, and 3. So those guys are mainly, and it's kind of funny because they kind of consider themselves more physicists than mathematicians. But I mean, physics, high school physics, especially if you've taken high school physics, you know that it's very similar to calculus 1. So that's not that shocking, I guess. And that actually concludes my list. Just a short little video to maybe show you where you can pull inspiration from. Little fun little pop quiz, I guess, for your teacher or what have you. But anyways, that was all for today. As always, go check out other awesome content on YouTube and on my website, myersmathematics.com. If you have any questions, you can email me. That's in the description below, as well as my website and other videos that might be of interest to you. So I will see you again in another episode real soon.